In science fiction, we often see robots with heads-up displays that add extra computery information into their fields of view. This is either very silly or quite profound.
Hi, I'm Dave Cooper. I teach software engineering at university and I write science fiction about robots. Here, I'm comparing some of the weird things that robots and AIs get up to in sci-fi to what we might extrapolate from computer science and society. When you get a chance, check out Nova Sapiens The Believers.
So a heads-up display, or HUD, is a real thing. It is used by fighter pilots, for instance, to add information into their view so that they can still focus on what's going on outside the aircraft without having to look down at their instruments quite as much. But it's been adopted by robots in science fiction as well. Often we see in certain TV shows and movies the robot's perspective, and we see all these funny numbers and graphs and symbols and things projected onto what the robot is seeing around them, in front of them. This is what we might call the robot's HUD.
Crichton, man, take it easy. I'm gonna get you out of here.
My legs, I can't feel them.
Yeah, they're trapping with the stanchion. I'm gonna have to cut you in two.
Secondly, I wouldn't trust you to open a can of sardines that was already open.
It's going to be okay, Toby. I'm going to get you out. Everything's going to be fine. I promise.
I think the reason this gets included is to project a sense that the robot is a computer on the inside, or that there are computery things going on inside the robot's head, and possibly also the robot has access to more information than a human being would about their environment, which is fair enough. But there are specific implications for what's going on inside the robot's head that go a bit beyond what you might first imagine. And to get at what I mean, I'm going to use a few props. So, first of all, we need to give the robot some eyes. So I'll put them over here. We obviously need to give the robot some sunglasses because that's how this works. And needless to say, a glowing red eye. But once we've done that, right, we're interested in what happens inside the robot's head. And we're going to use this to symbolize the visual representation of what the robot's seeing. So the robot's cameras or eyes are going to feed information to this visual representation. And say, for example, the robot is seeing a little group of people like that. But of course we need a heads-up display because we want to be all computery. So we want to add in some information that's going to look like that. And obviously we're going to have to do some processing on it to work out what's going to be in the heads-up display. So we'll add this little chip here. The chip is going to have to take its information from this visual representation and then feed back some additional information. So it's going to have to add something to that visual representation. And that's how we get our heads-up display, like so. But wait, there is a missing thing here. And the missing thing is, who exactly is it who's looking at this heads-up display? If we're going to have a heads-up display, there's going to have to be something in the robot's head, something else in the robot's head that actually takes in that information, right? Otherwise there's no point to it. It's as if the robot is displaying information for your benefit or my benefit, but not for their own benefit. So if we're to believe that this is actually a useful thing to have, there's going to have to be another processor that takes information from the combined representation and does its own thing with it. And this is where things get a bit weird, right? Because the first processor and the second processor aren't the same thing. So the implication is the robot has two brains in a sense, one of which is creating the heads-up display, and the other of which is consuming it. This only makes sense if they don't talk to each other. If these two parts of the robot are talking to each other, then the heads-up display doesn't need to exist. We could simply take this away and scrub out this line here and add an extra bit of communication here, possibly back and forth, who knows. And then that all works quite well, right? The robot's internal brain components can communicate however they like. There's no real need to superimpose that communication on top of what the robot is seeing. Now, in some science fiction, it actually makes a lot of sense to have a heads-up display because there may genuinely be two different things going on in the robot's head, or in the character's head. For example, in RoboCop.
Okay. I swear to Christ, it was Dean. She helped pull those guns. Just don't shoot me.
RoboCop has a human brain, but also some other kind of system in there that's augmenting them. So these are two different parts, and it would make perfect sense for RoboCop to have a heads-up display because that's the means of communication, or one means of communication between these two different parts. But it really doesn't make any sense for Terminator to have a heads-up display, because there's only one thing in Terminator's head, and that's the chip. That's their intelligent CPU. If Terminator has a heads-up display, it kind of implies that Terminator doesn't know what Terminator is thinking. It kind of means that Terminator has to do some thinking and then project the information in front of them in their visual field and then read it back again. There's also a particularly weird example in a movie called Cyborg 2 where Angelina Jolie's character has a heads-up display with her name, the character's name, in it, right in the middle, all the time.
What is it?
And I find this hilarious because you're talking about someone who has to look at their name all the time, every waking moment of their entire existence. There's their name emblazoned on their own field of vision. I think if we're going to have heads-up displays, we should think through the consequences and the implications of what that means for the characters, the robots or AIs or cyborgs that we're talking about. They're cool, but they're not just that. They mean something about how the robot actually works. And I think if the intention is to simply get a sense of the fact that there's kind of computery stuff going on inside their heads, I wonder if there's a better way of doing that.